Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
So transitioning now that we're done with you, Mike.
Yep.
So who did you bring here? Who's this guy? Who's this guy sitting to your right?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
That's Jeff Gonzales. Jeff, aside from also being a shipmate, number one, but also being a super, super great guy, he's also my handgun instructor.
Right.
So I've been doing some training with Jeff and didn't realize how much I sucked at that too until I started working with him. But he's doing good, man. He's doing good. He's getting me in line. So I'll slide out of the way and let you guys go to it.
Well, the funny thing is before I actually met Jeff, which today is the first time that I met him. I've heard about Jeff for a long time. A ton of my buddies. Mike, I think I was telling you, Mike Green from Greenlight. I think he owns Greenlight Tactical now is his company.
I think so.
A few years ago, he was telling me, because we were talking about like split times and three gun and all this fucking crazy shit. We're talking about this like really early on, like around 2006.
Oh, wow.
And because I was working the GRS CIA deal for quite a while. And so besides like roasting coffee around that time, like I was also hyper into fucking shooting, like, and Jeff was one of those guys, like his name kept coming up, and around that same time, your name kept coming up as like you're like a fucking ninja, like a ninja, like dudes are like, no man, you got to go check this dude out, because he really analyzes form, he works with you on streamlining fundamentals. And if you're having some issues, just like a strength coach or a condition coach or any of these other things, your name kept coming up over and over and over again in the community.
Yeah.
So just so you know, I heard about you fucking years ago, man.
Damn.
Like, I've heard your name forever.
Wow.
So it's a pleasure.
Badass.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well,
to
it's
finally meet you.
my pleasure and my honor to be out here. I appreciate it. Mike has been a good friend, and the invite to come up here was outstanding. I'm super excited to be up here. I mean, we've been following you guys for a while now, and watching you guys just take it by storm is awesome. I mean, Mike and I were having these conversations about love seeing guys be successful, knowing, and it's so funny because knowing how hard it is to be successful, knowing that nothing is free, everything is earned, or in some cases you just have to like take it in a lot of cases. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited as hell.
Well, tell us about yourself, man.
Sure.
Like, tell us about your journey.
Love that. So, my background comes from Naval Special Warfare. I was there for the better half of my adult life on the East Coast and the West Coast as a operator, and I finished up as an instructor.
Did you finish up as an instructor on the West Coast then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was my formative years, I couldn't have asked for anything better. I just was so lucky to be where I was at, doing what I was at. And for me, it was so funny to hear you talk, because there's so many parallels about what we've all been through that I can, like, I'm shaking my head. I'm going, God, yes. Oh my God. It's so trouble, so difficult, so hard. So when I left the Navy, I had these grand plans of what I was going to do. And, it took a while to get there. It took a long time to finally get to that. And there was a lot of pit stops along the way. And it was funny, when I finally left the Navy, I was still working, doing stuff overseas, same thing. And when I finally decided that we need to focus on one direction, either I keep deploying or I need to focus strictly on Trident concepts and try to focus on getting it where I need it to be. And that was a hard choice, to walk away from everything that I knew, and to walk into an area that I knew nothing about.
Right.
Because at the time I was just kind of doing okay. Trident concept started to take off, and then I had to make that choice, because I couldn't. It's like you were saying, you can't do both. I'm gonna do both of them half-ass.
I always equate it to being drawn and quartered. Right. It's like the same amount of energy that will actually like pull people down the road in a buggy with wheels is the same amount of energy that they can use in order to rip you apart.
For sure.
So however you emphasize and correlate, kind of organize that energy is all. It's dependent on the direction and kind of how comfortable you are. So you can either get behind it, or
and use
it. You can strap it onto your arms and legs and fucking rip yourself apart. Go for it.
It was so true. I mean, when I finally made the decision to step away from working overseas and focus exclusively on Trident Concepts, that was officially in 2003.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. We started in like literally, end of '99.
Mm-hmm.
I started training, and again, the funny thing is that Trident Concepts was like was an accident in a sense, because when I was deploying, we ran into a situation where we had a lot of folks that were on the soft skill sides that were very important to our mission, but they didn't have the hard skills.
Right.
And we were in austere conditions most of the time, so we were babysitting them a lot. My suggestion at one of the headquarter meetings was, hey, these guys should probably get some training, probably get dialed in a little bit on how to shoot and protect themselves so that we don't have to. Great idea. Take it for action. So I became the de facto kind of trainer there to kind of take them out to the range. And we all went out together. We rolled pretty heavy in those days. And so I started doing it there. And then...
Was that Afghanistan or Iraq?
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, early, real early.
Mm-hmm.
When I made the suggestion again, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. Hey, they should probably get this training before they leave the States. Good idea.
Good idea.
Take it for action. So I started doing it, and one thing led to another. The word started getting out, and before I knew it, I was doing it for domestic law enforcement, and then for this, still within the special operations community of DoD, but then really heavily in domestic law enforcement, and then it just snowballed into the private sector. And I mean, there was like 4 to 5 years where I was traveling about 280 to 290 days a year.
Yeah.
Traveling and training all over the country and the world.
Well, that's an important thing I want to really touch on for a second. Is we get a lot of guys that want to start, shooting tactical type companies and things like that. And there's a myth out there once again, and we'll just dispel this fucking myth, because I played that game for a while as well, which is I'm gonna have all this time. It's like, man, you're gonna be on the fucking road. You're gonna be living out of a hotel
for sure. It is so. It's like it, and there's like this rock star allure to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, oh yeah, it's so cool. I'm like, dude, it's not cool. Yeah. I mean, it's the job and what I do. I love doing, but all the facets that go into it, I could live without.
Yeah.
If I could I could live without all that shit. So, I mean, we were doing awesome, but we were also a young family living out, it was so funny. I'm like flashing back. Yeah, we would put the cash in the envelopes every month, and that's what we had to spend. We had to make that last, and that was in the early years, right? And then things
I did the same thing.
It's
because you take it out in the beginning of the month, and I literally put it in the envelope, and we would put it in the cupboard next to the dishes.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's it. Once it's gone, it's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. You can't go back to the ATM. You can't go back to the credit card.
It was so hard.
I didn't have that problem because there wasn't any cash.
It was so hard, and I give kudos to my ex-wife. She's the one that did that. My job was just to beat the pavement, get out there and work. And she did everything on the home front. So I mean, it was rough there for a while, and finally it kicked in. And like I always tell people in the beginning of classes, there are 3 things. We look at everything. We collect metrics on everything that we can. And over the years, I've looked at trends and patterns of our success to try to understand so we can replicate it and keep doing it. And the 3 things that I keep coming back to is like everything, and this is kind of the same. Everything that we do is based off battlefield experience, our own in a sense, what I saw both on active duty and after, as well as the community and staff. And then the second little tidbit I feel is really important, which is everything that we do is based on performance standards, which is where our reputation precedes us. Everything we do, you have to perform. You have to perform to a standard, and I don't know how to do it any other way.
Right.
I don't understand how others can do it. I know that our industry is, it's a toss up between education and entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is clowns are a form of entertainment, right?
That's a good one. Yes.
Like that's where I literally came up with Instructor Earl.
Yes, I love him, by the way. He is so...
Because obviously I surf social media, not on a regular basis by any stretch of the imagination, but I see it and I see the industry, and I also know who are the real players in the industry, like guys that really fucking bring the game, that are like no shit.
Yeah.
And then you got a bunch of guys out there that are like, I can shoot well for Instagram, kinda.
Yes.
Or I can't even shoot well for Instagram, and you're just putting on a fucking rubber nose. And
so many of those. It's
so many.
I've actually had a guy come through a class, and he told me, he's like, comes up to me in a break because he's really struggling, and he's like, "Man, I'm having a hard time here. I'm really just struggling, man. This is a lot harder than it was on TV." And I'm like, "What do you mean on TV?" "Well, in Call of Duty, it's so much easier."
Shut up.
I swear to fucking God, I am not lying. I almost slapped him right then and there. Like, it was just an instinct. My arm, I was like,
You wanted to
don't. I did. I wanted to hit him so hard. So, the second one is that everything we do is based on performance standards. And that's a plus and a minus, because in this industry, there's a tremendous amount of egos.
Huge.
And so people don't like to, and I loved hearing Mike talk about like the humility of all of this.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you have to be humble. And like, people don't want to know that they suck.
I've said this for 5+ years now. In business, you have to be prepared to sacrifice your ego on the altar of business. Not in business. I'd always say you have to be prepared to sacrifice your ego on the altar of business. And they're like, "What the fuck does that mean?" I'm like, "Dude,
I don't understand how
if
people
you don't know what that means,
I don't understand how people don't know that.
You got to offer it up to the gods, because the shit ain't gonna work unless you kill it."
It's so true. I mean, your ego will not get you what you want. It just doesn't. So a lot of people are intimidated to come to classes because there is a pass-fail component.
Yeah.
And they don't like that. Like, everybody, like it's, not everybody gets a juice box for us. That was actually a blog title I did that got huge fan mail. Because that's what this industry is. It's about stroking the egos and making people happy. And there is an entertainment side to it. I get that. I do have fun. I do love to have fun, but I also enjoy what I do, so that makes it easy. But then we get a lot of people that don't want to do that, and they're naysayers to a certain extent, and that's fine. There's other people that can handle that. The nice thing about it is that it was also a way to deal with a lot of the the people that we didn't really want to train anyhow. People that didn't have the right mindset, that weren't really committed to working hard, and none of this, we call it, and everybody here knows exactly what I mean by the law of farming. If you didn't till the land, you can't expect to reap the harvest.
Right.
And that's the hard work that we all put into it every day. So shooting is no different. You're not going to get there overnight. In a 2-day class, I can do really good to get you where might be respectable for a 2-day class, but then it's up to you after that.
Right.
It's all on you. And then the third thing is, I don't care. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you do. I don't care what uniform you might or might not wear. All I care about is performance. And when you're not meeting the standards, we have to figure out why.
Right.
And it's a relationship between the instructor and the student to be able to have that type of level of trust, to be able to guide them through there, which is, I think, where a lot of other people are appreciative of, because we have a process called corrective strategies that allows us to diagnose what you're doing. Mike has seen it, to figure out what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. And it's like everybody wants to go to the range and they just want to practice what they're good at. Mm-hmm. Just want to go and mow down an El Presidente, or they just want to yeah, exactly.
Shit's fucking epic.
It's so true.
It's gonna look good on my stories, dog.
Damn straight, man. Check out my brass. I got 3 pieces of brass in the air, but I ain't hitting shit. Nobody sees that.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't look over there. Don't look over there. So it's one of those things where I tell people, I was like, hey, listen, don't come up to me. If I come up to you and I'm giving you pointers, I'm giving you coaching tips or something I need you to do, don't give me an excuse. Don't sit there and tell me that, I didn't, I ask people, why is that bullet there? Why is that bullet hole there? Oh, the sun was in my eyes. I'm like, nope, that's not the answer I'm looking for. That's not. And I just walk away from them at times. And then eventually they figure out, why is the shot there? Well, the shot's there because I'm not doing what I need to do. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Now we're starting to get someplace. Now we can actually work with that. That's a tangible product.
Right.
People give me excuses all the time. I used to have like a running list of top 20. And I'd be like, I'd check off. I had a little matrix that every time somebody gave me that, I'd put a little tick in the box there to see which one was the most popular one for that year.
Yeah.
because there was like there were recurring themes to a certain extent. You know,
I like that. You should post those.
Oh, man.
Top 20 excuses, because that shit would be that would be great.
It's actually, I probably should. I'll go in
Yeah.
there and try to find. It's in one of my hundreds of wheel books that I have there, but
Right.
I'll try to find it because it was hilarious. And people like I use my wheel book a lot. Like I'm writing down stuff in my wheel book all the time. A lot of times it's like, I'm writing down observations, or I'm writing down problems with gear or problems with equipment.
Oh yeah, the gear. I always love that one. Oh man, it's my fucking holster.
Yes, that's
What?
another one.
My holster's too tight. I couldn't get it out. That's why.
I've had somebody say that to
What?
me. I actually had somebody say that to me, and I said, "Oh, you know what you need? You need some chicken fat. Go get some chicken fat and rub that shit inside that holster." And I was dead serious. I was dead serious and walked away. And I'm like, as I'm walking away, I'm thinking, God, I wonder if he's gonna find some chicken fat.
He's gonna find some chicken fat.
Because that used to be something that we used to joke about. It's like, my holster, my gun comes out of my holster so fast because it's laced with chicken fat. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is what you need. You need some chicken fat because
Yeah.
your holster is not obviously fast enough. So it was fun. So that kind of that started us on our journey here, and it's been amazing. I mean, I am so thankful for everything that I've had a opportunity to participate in. I mean, I consider it to be one of the most important things that I think aside from wearing the flag and doing that for as long as I did, this is probably one of the most important things that I think I've done in this, other than being, flag bearer and a father. Those are the two.
Well, and you're based out of Austin, right?
Yeah.
And are you traveling? Are you putting on courses around the nation?
We do. I mean, now I also, I was very, again, timing and opportunity have been very grateful for me, and I'm now the director of training at the range in Austin, which is a really nice,
yeah, it's a really nice range.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm happy that we're carrying your product in our range as well. So, yeah, it's kind of nice to have that opportunity to be centralized and local, and I made that choice because I wanted to be around for the kids a little bit more.
Right.
Funny because it's a startup business, so I'm actually working more.
Right.
Which is another hilarious lesson to learn again. But I do a lot of work in Austin, there at the range in Austin, and then I still travel quite a bit. I only do about 8 to 10 classes a year on the road.
Right.
But they are always fun. They're always fun, and it's kind of like the right timing because I'm home long enough that I'm ready to get on the road again. And
Right.
then when I'm on the road, I realize how much I hate it, and I want to
Right.
get back. So it's like perfect.
That's about where I am, except for now I'm like on the road where I'm like, fuck, I just don't want to even be on the road anymore. By the way, I always just give people LaCroix so they can burp on the mic.
I was just going to say,
Like,
you
fuck.
bastard.
Just like burping on the
Dude,
mic
I'm
the
like-
entire time.
I was like, oh, he caught me right. He must have saw me taking a swig just then. He's like, Jeff, hey, bastard. Well played.
and there's still, I know a ton of guys, man, and I mean, obviously, not like, oh, I know a ton of guys, bro. Like Kyle and I have talked about this. Kyle Lamb and I've talked
yeah, I
about
love
it,
Kyle.
and he's on the road less and less. He's like, dude, if I could not be on the road as much, because he at certain points, especially right after he retired, he was on the road like 3:30.
Yeah, dude.
And nonstop courses every week. Plus you have setup, you have your preparation, your setup, your actual course, and then you have the tear down, and then you have travel in between. And it's like he was going from course to course to course. In VTAC, he told me and he tells me this a lot actually. He's like, I used to have this sign it said VTAC, a great big company. And now I scratched some words out on it, and he's like, now it's VTAC, a great company.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I tried to grow this company, but what I realized was all I was doing was making myself excruciatingly unhappy. And now I just concentrate on delivering a really high quality product, and also having some type of work-life balance.
Oh, man, dude. That is the key. I was never probably ambitious enough to think that the Trident concepts would go off and just like become the household name that we all wanted it to be. I thought, you know what? And here's the other problem that I ran into. I was so busy in the trenches that I never really came up to look and get that 1,000-foot view. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to take this company? I just was going from one class to a next. It's very little like long-term planning for me. It was all just, oof. I get home, I had like 3 sets of clothes or packages. As soon as I'd come home, dump that package, put a new package in the bag, out the door I would go. And at the end of the month, I would have all 3 packages just filthy dirty,
Right.
clean them all up, get ready for the next month. So there was like no real long-term planning that I got a chance to do. And I was sitting here thinking, like, what are some of the mistakes that I made? And that's a serious one, is that I just got so focused on, okay, got to do this, got to make it from one class to the next class. Never came up for air. I mean, for like 5-6 years, never came up for air.
Nice. So you're packing up your bags, you're ripping out, like traveling all the time. But I want to go back a little bit because
Sure.
we just realized something. We were actually in the bathroom together talking, and I was taking a shit and he was pissing. And I hope is that too much information, Dave? I don't know.
Not at all.
So he's like, yeah, I was actually a plank holder at Blackwater. It's like, oh, okay, Blackwater. Well, shit, why don't we talk about that? Because that's a super fun experience.
Yes.
So the formation of Blackwater, which I think a lot of people don't, and still to this day don't even understand.
Yeah.
That was around in the late 90s when they first started this, because I was going through the Q course in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys I was going through the Q course with, Q, and I forget his, well, he's forget his Quentin, forget his last name, but we were going through the Q course. He's like, hey man, there's this great training place in Virginia. You guys should think about going out. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And that was the first time that I heard about Blackwater, and that was, I think, 99, roughly.
Yeah.
So when did you go over there?
So, well, Blackwater itself stood up way before then. Like
really?
5. Yeah, but they stood up because the thing that it was great. They were like 45 minutes from the team area,
right?
And they were in a swamp that nobody wanted to build on,
right?
And they started off fairly small compared to how big they are now.
Yeah.
And platoons would just roll down there and spend the day training and then come back at night. So it wasn't like TDY. It was still considered kind of in the area.
Right.
Which later we realized that kind of sucks. But at the time it was awesome because it was brand new, shiny, pretty. Yeah. Everything was cool. And Eric Prince, who was also a team guy, he pretty much is the guy that stood that up. And then the war kicked off.
Right.
And he had this idea that we could do a better job in some areas. We can avoid a lot of pitfalls and obstacles by having just private contractors doing a lot of work.
Right.
And he pitched it, and it went. And he got the first contract to go overseas in this time period. There was a lot of other stuff that was happening, a lot of other contractors doing work, but not in this area. And I got a call from his general manager, a guy named Gary Jackson, who was one of my training officers at one point back on the East Coast as well. And he tells me in this real cryptic manner, he's like, calls me my nickname. He goes, hey, Speedy, I got something for you. I'm like, what? What do you got? I can't tell you over the phone. But in about an hour or two, you should have a FedEx package at your doorstep, which is a plane ticket to come out here, and we'll tell you everything you need to know out here. I'm like, I am intrigued.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and literally
and let me tell you this: we're the only people on the planet that know what stuff like that means. Any other person would be like, "Fuck you! I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to send me a plane ticket in the mail. Go fuck yourself."
Literally got a plane ticket in the mail. FedEx. Poor guy dropped it off. He's like sweating trying to get it to me. But I asked him, I was like, okay, so he's not answering my questions. I'm like, okay, well, can you at least tell me who's involved? And he stops for a second. He's like, yeah, I can do that. And he starts rattling off these guys that are all just, they're legends in the community. They're all just straight up pipe hitters. And I'm like, all right. All right, so I went out there, and we there was about 16 of us, and the first group that went out there was, of the 16, I think 12 of us were all team guys.
Okay.
And then the rest of them were filled in with special niches, like they had specialties that we needed. And we still didn't know what we were doing. We just all went out there, and then we went out and we got all this really kick-ass gear, and we got all this, we were out there, and they just said, hey, Jeff take them out and start training them, get them shooting and doing stuff. And then we get called into like the main building, and they're like, okay, we're going to, we're going to bring you up to speed on what's happening. We're like, cool. And I'm like, they really didn't tell us anything.
Right.
I'm like, that's not a brief. That's not really telling us anything. So then they were like, okay, so we're leaving tomorrow morning, 0600. We're on a plane or on a charter bus up to DC. And we went up to this main building at some, and that area in Northern Virginia, that's where all the special people are.
Yeah, Chantilly.
Yes, exactly. So we go up there and we walk into this conference room, and there are these guys in there in like $1,000 suits. They're all there waiting to brief us. And we finally got the brief, and we were like, fuck yeah. Oh my God, this is so fucking awesome. Can't wait. And I remember the one thing that really resonated with me was we were seeing stuff that later, 6 months to a year later, was all public knowledge.
Right.
All the really bad shit that was happening overseas.
Right.
And they're like telling us, yep, this is it. This is what we're going to be doing. You guys are going to be doing this. And I mean, what we were briefed turned out to not be what we did. Mm-hmm. But that's just because when we got on the ground, it was awesome. And incredibly, it's so funny because I tell people this, like, we were making some good coin back then, real good coin. And after about 5-6 years of doing that, people were like, man, I want to get into that. I'm like, and they were active duty guys that had a career. Yeah. That like literally you had 6 to 8 years till retirement. And I'm like, that's a fucking stupid idea. Yeah. Don't do it. You don't understand what's going to happen. Right. You are going to find yourself. Me? Oh, that's me. Sorry, guys. That's all right. You're going to find yourself. Let me put that in here where it feels a little better. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to find. There we go. I saw you. Can you call me real fast? I was like, you are going to be on your own. Yeah. With no backup. Like, you have no QRF. Mm-hmm. We were, and we knew that going in, but other guys didn't get that. They're coming from this big machine component where everything is done for you. You go here for that and here for this. And I was trading for minimal, just to get gun parts. I was trading like cans of Copenhagen with guys. I'm like, hey man, can you hook us up? Here's a can of Copenhagen to get like a buffer spring for a gun. It was crazy. But I loved it. And we really did some amazing things while we were there. It's like, I went back there from like, I think it was 07, 09, somewhere in that neighborhood. I can't remember. And then they wanted me to go to Iraq, and the same thing. Got the same call, and I'm like, okay, all right. And I went out there, and things didn't work out. I was like, I don't think so. But while I was doing all the work in Afghanistan, it was probably some of the most. When you work in the military field and you're downrange and you're doing stuff, so you sometimes don't get a chance to see the big picture because especially as a specialized unit, we're very surgical. Mm-hmm. You guys have the opportunity to work with the locals and really make a change, a difference. On our end, it's not necessarily our mission. It's not a mission directive in a sense. Right. So to get there and actually have the opportunity to interact with the public and try to really make a difference was unique in that sense, and I hadn't seen that before. And I remember I came back and I was asked to go and speak at some sort of annual Rotary meeting. And it was kind of like the first time I'd ever had a chance to do that. And they were like, listen, we really want you to talk about your experience in Afghanistan. I'm like, well, I can talk to you as a private citizen. I just can't tell you a lot of the stuff that happened there. And they're like, no, that's fine. Just talk what you feel like is okay. What they didn't tell me was that there was going to be an opposing view.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they didn't tell me that. And on top of that, I went first. Right. So I didn't know. And I go in, and the thing that I try to tell people, and this, I think you can appreciate this, is that when what we historically had done up to that point was we'd get someplace, we'd stir the pot, and we'd leave. Right. And we'd leave a lot of these people to fend for themselves. And once we're gone, the bullies would just roll in and just, retribution in a lot of cases. So, what I saw when I was going there, and I was deploying for like 45 to 60 days at a pop, and I would see things change in that time period because I would leave. So when I came back, it was fresh, and I would see change. I'd be like, oh, cool, this is different from the last time I was here. And what I was explaining to the crowd that time was like, hey, the first time we were on the ground, we did not see a woman at all. I mean, the entire time I was there, the only women we saw were in our compound. That was it. Didn't even see burqa-clad women. That's how bad it was. The second and third time, we started to see the hordes, the burqa-clad hordes, full head to toe.
Right.
And I started paying more attention to that. Like, interesting. And then after that, I came back, and now we're seeing them walking in just 1-2 female adults with a lot of kids. And we're seeing, instead of the full burqa, just the headpiece.
Right.
So you're starting to see progress, but you don't understand that. But that's what it was, is progress. They're starting to trust us more, starting to believe in our mission. They were starting to actually come on board. And then, like my last deployment, I remember I'm walking someplace, I can't remember where it was, and I actually saw a woman dressed in Western business wear. Like, no shit, she had on a business suit. It was a pantsuit, but it was a Western business suit. People don't understand how amazing that is to see that in a part of the world that was so oppressive to women. So oppressive. Like when we were there, our first tour, when we first got on the ground, the guys were taking us around. They took us by their soccer stadium, which had just weeks before had a stoning.
Oh, that was Kabul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Used to drive by that soccer stadium all the time.
All the time.
Hey, let's go take in a good stoning, fellas.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were literally there like a week later, and you could still see the dried pool of blood all over on the turf field. You know, it's just like that. That's how real it was.
Yeah.
So I sit there and I'm talking to the crowd about this, and I'm just trying to explain, hey, this is why it's important for us to be involved, to see that. I mean, I was there when they first voted, when women were first given the chance to vote, which was an amazing time period. And then I get done, a bunch of the crowd's asking questions, and this one person that was sitting in the front row, a female, kept asking me very pointed questions, and they were, and I kept telling her, I'm like, I can't speak for the U.S. government. I can just tell you what my observations are. And she's like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I just kept telling her, and she just was very adamant about kind of getting, like trying to be, she was sharpshooting the shit out of me.
Right.
And I'm like, lady, I'm not going to answer those questions. You
Right.
know, like, talk to us about policy. I'm like, do I look like I know about policy?
I am not wearing a tie.
Thank you. So,
If I am, I did not tie it.
yes, it's probably going to snap something very important. So I finally had enough. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, lady, listen, if you and I were to just have some miracle transportation device transport us right over to this area that I'm talking about right now, and if I walk away from you more than 10 feet, you're going to die. You're going to die, because that is what happens. So cherish the fact that you have the ability to have this conversation with me, even if you disagree with me. Cherish the fact that you can. And that's the whole point behind what we were doing there, was progress. And it just was like everybody was wrapped around the axle thing. It's not seeing that. So my work with Blackwater was awesome, and I made some amazing discoveries of myself.
Right.
Like, we were really on our own out there. I mean, you take so much for granted. And when you're doing that job, it's, there was a time when, they were labeling us mercenaries and whatnot. And, it's like, well, all right, you want to put that label on, that's fine. But that's not what we were doing at all.
No.
So it was difficult to get the public to understand what we were doing out there and why, more importantly. But, man, it was a blast.
And even why they were even needed, I mean, that's the whole thing, which is, as a former special operations guy and a volunteer and a person that made this I made it my profession.
Right.
I was much more proficient than an 18-year-old kid straight out of AIT. And it was much more cost-effective for the government, and it was much more politically cost-effective, too, in a sense of, and I used to argue with this all the time. If I get fucking blown up out there, like, it's my choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing it for college money anymore, man.
Nope.
This is me, and it's my profession. And these are the tools of my trade, and this is what I do.
Exactly.
Just like a welder or anybody else, this is what I do. And people would always say, well, I mean, is it, what you're doing is mercenary work? I'm like, nope. By the strict definition, I'm not. Actually, I'm doing, counterintelligence and diplomatic protection, a bunch of different mission sets within one umbrella. But more importantly, the chances of me getting my legs blown off or being, maimed, injured, killed are exponentially less than the 19-year-old kid, one. Two, I'm 30. I've had a little bit more life. So if I do get fucking blown up and I die over there, at least I've had a few more years under me where I'm conscious in these decisions, and it's not me saying, well, I'm going to go do this for, a couple bucks of college money. And people disagree with me all the time. Like, serving your country is an incredible experience, and we should never devalue that experience whatsoever. But working in Afghanistan and Iraq, definitely in the last 2 decades, they don't understand the rules of engagement in an unconventional warfare landscape are so fucking complex.
Oh my God.
You cannot begin to comprehend the complexity at fucking 19 years old.
Yes.
You can't.
It's tough. It was tough for us.
And the chances of me committing a murder, too, an unjustified killing, are exponentially less than that 19-year-old. So even though we were, paramilitary contractors, the cost effective and the effectiveness of the contractor in that landscape not only saved the government money.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely saved the government money. But it was a better choice because of the people they were incorporating to put into those positions. And I've had this conversation with countless fucking people.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, I don't understand how you could do that. It's like, dude, I'll tell you why I could do that. Because every time I like rubber meets the road for me, like I'm a volunteer.
Yeah.
It's just like a Joe or anybody else. But the chances of me getting in a gunfight, running over a civilian, killing somebody that is an unjustified murder essentially are so much lower than a 19 or 20-year-old kid, because their brain isn't even fully developed at 20 years old.
So true.
And you think that they're going to make fucking great decisions when they're being shot at or their buddies just got their head blown off yesterday?
Yeah.
That's not realistic.
It's not. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the benefit of what the ultimate decision of having the paramilitary contractors in play was huge, and people don't recognize that.
No.
We're so quick to gloss over that. But that saved us not just in human lives, but that saved us, and not just in finances, but I mean, people don't understand what it means to actually fight a war logistically.
No, they don't.
Like what it takes, and the fact that we were able to do it with such a small footprint. Such a small footprint. And Afghanistan was hugely successful when you think about it in those terms.
Right.
And goes right over the head of everybody else.
Yep.
They cannot see the benefit behind that. I predict that because of that type, and of course there's always those the bad apples. There's always the things that happen, and we can't control that. It's just like
police.
It's just like that, or anything
overwhelmingly
else.
Policemen they're heroic, and they're doing the most difficult job in the United States. There are a few guys out there that are fucking legitimately dicks.
Hey,
very few. But they're the few, man. It's like few.
It is so, and I kind of make fun of it in a sense. I'm like, hey man, NASA and Walmart hire from the same gene pool.
Yeah, they do.
So
yeah.
I mean, you're gonna get that type of cross section. You got to have a little bit of sympathy to a certain extent. That we do the best that we can to weed that out through our selection process, but hey, it's still every now and then we're human at the end of the day, and there's going to be times when folks make bad calls, and you just got to roll with it. But we exponentially reduce it by having that level of maturity and experience. And like I always felt like, hey, well, first of all, let's not go out and pick a fight that we probably can't manage on our own.
Right.
If we're going to do this, we have to be fully committed, because we're probably not going to roll back from this.
Well, and you have more tools, because you have more tools in order to solve a problem. And I think that's what people don't quite understand, especially infantry, like a young infantryman. He's got one tool to solve a problem.
So true.
However, you've got a little bit more experience, a little bit more training, a little bit different mission set. Now you've got more tools. So you're not just using a hammer on a bolt. And I think that was the thing where, I spent 5 years on the ground in Iraq.
Wow.
Not 5 years in a row, but in 90 and 120-day rotations. Just seeing Iraq develop over the course of 5 years. Then I went to Afghanistan after that. My experience there in both military, because I was there as a special forces guy, and then I was there as a PMC. in totally different mission sets.
Yeah.
And not only that, but an emphasis on, in the military, we had tools to solve the problem, but most of those were, let's solve this problem with violence, which is a tool. It's a very definitive tool that can be used in an appropriate time, but it's not the only tool. You can break contact and play another day. You can not get in a gunfight, which is preferable. I mean,
absolutely, man. I'm telling you, man,
it's preferable.
We had to, you just had to be smart, and that's what I was telling people. I'm like, man, you've got to be smart. There is no, you're on your own, and I don't think people really understood that. And I mean, it was a good thing to be on your own like that, because we didn't. That would have defeated the purpose of what we were there, having that small footprint, being able to manage what we did.
Right.
But it also made you really think through things and make sure that you are willing to take, bite off what you can, not bite off more than you can handle. Just bite off what you can and manage it that way. And I think that was the lesson that I took away. It's like, hey, you know what? Again, there's no place on the battlefield for ego. You got to be willing to acknowledge that. Okay, this might be a little bit much, or let's think of a different way that we can do this. And we did that a lot. We kind of figured out, okay, when we're going to go to the range today and we don't have all the cool guys stuff, like we didn't have up armored vehicles, we didn't have, that good at comms. So what can we do? How can we make this happen? And we figured it out. We made do. And I think that was one of the bigger takeaways for me as well, is having to think out of the box on such a regular basis.
Right.
Regular basis. Almost daily.
Well, and it's funny too, because a lot of trainers, and I've talked to I don't know how many shooting coaches and trainers and over the years, because guys get attached to like one guy, right? They're like, oh, this is the dude, this is the guy. And you're like, no, man, this is a buffet.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Matt Frazier the other day, the guy that won CrossFit Games, fucking awesome dude. Yeah. And he's like, no, I got a coach for deadlift, I got a coach for Oli, I got a coach for swimming, I got a coach for running. Like, he's got coaches, right?
Yeah.
For each one of the skills that he's trying to emphasize. I've got, guys plugging in my diet, all these things, because it's a super complex. We're talking about exercise, right? And competition and exercise. And I've talked to so many guys where they're like, well, I just, this is the guy, he's the guy that knows everything. I'm like, it's impossible to know everything, first of all.
Yep.
And you have to seek out a coach that will emphasize a specific aspect of your training that you're really trying to get better. So for me, if I knew a guy and, after a few years, a guy that's like, he can help me with my pistol, he can help me with my rifle, he can help me with my movement, he can help me with my CQB. I would go to Darcy for CQB.
Yeah.
I think you probably heard of the Direct Action Resource Center, I'm sure.
For sure.
So, but I could go down there and be fully immersed and do hundreds of fucking CQB runs in an environment where we could do live breaching and, we could do demo, we could do fucking bangs, we could do anything live, whatever and anything ever. And I could do hundreds of fucking runs, right? I could do that all day long. But Darcy was not the place where I was going to improve my split times from point to point, transitioning targets while moving from A to B.
Exactly.
That wasn't the place.
Yeah. And that's a tough one to accept and acknowledge. I mean, I was very lucky, because in the early stages of my career, the way that we did it was we would send guys out to the source, whatever that source is, like whatever it was, and they would go and they would learn from the source, and then they would come back and they would relay that information to the rest of the community, to the team area, whatever it was, platoon, team, or community. And that was a great way to do it, because we were able to send 5 guys in 5 different directions, and we get 5 different viewpoints that we come back, and then we'd all sit there collectively and say, I like this, maybe not that, but I like this, and we'd bring it in together, and it made us really good. And then we kind of shifted to where now what we want to bring the source to us and just have the source do everything.
Right.
And then we started to become a little bit incestual at that moment, because we weren't seeing the big picture from all these. Yes. Yes, we weren't seeing the big picture to a large extent, and that sucked, because I can remember the most important thing that I can tell people, like when I would send guys to training schools, or I send them to go and do stuff, I'd say, hey, listen, here's the deal. This is what you need. You need to go to this guy, because we're sending you to this person for a reason. You need to learn as much as you can. I don't care what it is. I don't care what he tells you to do or how he tells you to do it. Do it, right? Because your job is to learn as much as you can and bring that information back to us, right? Your job is to increase your lethality on the battlefield and bring that back to us. So whatever he says, however he tells you. And the guys would go out and they'd kind of take it, they would take that information in. And what would happen a lot of times is, like, I would say, if you don't understand what that guy is telling you to do, then you're failing.
Right.
He doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know that you don't understand. He's just following his program with the assumption that you understand. So if you don't understand, you need to learn to have the ability to ask the why. Why am I doing this? What's going on? How do I fix this? I don't get it. That right there, I told everybody, and I still tell that to this day. It's like, listen, if I don't tell you the why, if you don't have buy-in on the why, then I'm not doing my job. But you need to develop your own why to understand why it is that you're learning this. You know, what's your motivation for this? Because I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, you're going to have a lot more frustration, a lot more setbacks, a lot more disappointments than you are all the other good things at this stage in your development.
Right.
Because you're learning. And there's a lot of failure involved in learning, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. So to get through all that frustration, if you don't have direct tie-in to your why, you're not going to ever really get where you want to go. And I tell this to a lot of people. It's like, listen, my job is to make you maximize your potential, but I can only do so much. It's on you really at that point. I'll set the tone. I'll lay it all out for you, and I will get you going. But really, to get to your potential, it's on you. Mm-hmm. It's on you to do that.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times, you know, because I for my entire adult life, that's basically, you know, what I was seeking, the information from different guys. And, you know, you run across guys, you bump into them and you talk to them. It's like, what are you doing? You know, like, what are you doing for your training?
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing for, you know, fitness? Because fitness was a huge component of this. And I loved, because there's so many guys, and you know this too, they're all doing the same shit, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, follow the leader, they're all just doing the same shit. And some of that's good.
Yeah.
But you got to break paradigms. And, you know, it's funny because SOCOM did a study around like 2006 probably. And they came out with this study on casualty rates. And they said that their casualties are being taken from adjacent spaces. They weren't being taken from the room that the CQB elements were actually in. They were room to room, basically.
Yeah.
So they were shooting from 2 rooms deep or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we got to fix our geometry, because we were doing opposing corner CQB, and opposing corner CQB with limited men and limited assets. That means you don't own the entire fucking piece of real estate.
For sure.
It's really difficult to cover down on your angle, especially when you're trying to get to the other side of the room and you're blowing off adjacent space a lot of the times just so you can get intersecting fields of fire, basically. And when I landed on a couple of guys, I was like, oh, okay, well, these guys are thinking outside of the box. This is interesting. And then I gave it a shot, right? Where, hey, you just got to try it. I don't fucking know. Like, let's just try.
Right.
And some of the stuff, you know, in that exploratory research, some of it's garbage, but some of it's like, oh, you know what? That's really fucking cool. You might go through a day, 2 days of training where you're like, 90% of this I'm going to flush down the toilet. But that one piece,
dude,
that shit is gold.
I'm telling you, man. And that's the problem with so many people. Like, you have to be willing to go outside of your comfort zone, number one. And that's right there, what you just described. Let's just try it. That is so much outside of everybody's comfort zone, because we have a lot of institutional inertia within the special operations and the military in general. And that can be good and that can be bad. But we have to constantly be pushing. It is our job, especially as a special operations community, to be pushing the envelope, to be learning about the next, newest, best, whatever it is. And if we're not pushing the envelope like that, that's where we're going to find ourselves getting our asses handed to us. And that's not a cool thing. So especially if it's avoidable, I love the fact that people are, and I tell that to, you know, listen, if you came here with your mind already made up, then why are you even here?
Right.
You know, if you came here to try to be better and to try to improve yourself, that's gold. That's the key. It's like, okay, I need to get better. Okay, this is not the way I'm used to doing it. I don't know good, bad. I don't know any of that yet. you got to put it. And here's the other thing is that you can't just kind of do a half-ass, like go through the motions. If you really want to improve, you've got to give it 100%. You got to give it your all. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, you know what? I gave it my 100%. Didn't really see that much improvement.
Yeah.
Check. Good. All right. It's an experience. Check the box.
I fought tooth and nail with guys because I spent the last 2 years of my career in training over at the agency, putting on their vetting and selection program. And I fought tooth and nail because I was big on, hey, let's put a theory to practice and let's put it into the house and let's run it against OPFOR. Let's see how it looks. Fuck, you can't even imagine the amount of like pushback.
Oh, I
and
can.
just like, yeah, you know, because the guys from the community, they're just like, that's not the way we did it in that group or Delta or SF or whatever. And you're just like, dude, we're talking about just trying something different. And one of the big things that I was trying to institute was a completely silent CQB SOP.
God. Love that.
That was very fast.
Yes.
So you could do basically free flow CQB completely silent with 2 men. And I had been fucking thinking about this for years.
Yes.
And nobody does it.
Yes.
Because big direct action elements, they don't do 2-man CQB. They don't do it. You don't do 1-man entries. You don't, it takes 2 to tango at all times. It's like, yeah, but what if you only have 2 guys?
Yes.
That's the problem. Limited resources. I have to find a solution to this problem. And I spent months of my life like fucking cocktail napkins and computer screens and fucking just like, and then let's put the gear on and then we'll fight.
Yeah.
And then it was like, let's fight against it and see how it works. Does it work? Does it not work? And they're like, well, I mean, this is like, and then you'd have that thing like, well, this is training, man.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, but how are you supposed to get like prepare for a fight? You could ask Tim Kennedy this question. It's like, could you prepare for a fight without fucking sparring?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
That's what we do. I mean, first of all, I will nerd the fuck out on that silent CQB and limited numbers. When I left the Navy and I started working in the private sector, all we did was, and we use the term small unit too loosely in our community. Small unit in this case was 2 people, maybe 3 if you were lucky.
Right.
And I hated, I would walk into the private sector and they would talk their way through shit. I mean, just like to get from this side of the room to the other side. Yes.
Blah, blah,
yes.
Door right, window left. Fuck
oh my
you.
God.
Shut the fuck up.
It drove me crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I mean, this is how come we're getting dudes shot in other rooms is because they know we're fucking here. I know they know we're here, but they know we're here.
Right. And that's the thing where I was trying to solve a problem, right? Where it's just like, hey, I got blown off the street. I'm trying to do, you know, I'm moving through hard structures. And I don't want people to know that I'm fucking here. And if I don't go live, that's even better.
For sure.
And so when I started teaching CQB, I started teaching 1-man.
Yeah.
And they're like, why are you teaching 1-man CQB? And I was an uphill battle that I had to articulate on a regular basis. I'm like, here's the reason why. I'm 2 men in the streets of fucking Mosul, Iraq.
Yeah.
I get fucking blown out of a vehicle and my driver's fucking head is all over the back seat.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drag his body with me. I hope you understand that. This is about surviving for me, and I have to have a 1-man CQB. And when they're like, well, that's CQB's direct action. I don't give a fuck what you call it. I have to be able to clear through a series of structures to achieve tactical advantage.
Yes.
In order to communicate effectively, to link up with a superior force to fucking get my ass out of this country so I can see my family again.
Yeah.
Well, we can't do that. We can't start with 1 man. Fuck you. We can't start with 1 man. We have to start with 1 man.
Oh my God.
Cops do it. And then, so I went with the LAPD SWAT.
Yeah.
And I talked to LAPD SWAT and I was like, I got to have a 1-man CQB SOP. I've got to have one. And finally, some guys were like, well, this is kind of what we do.
Yeah.
But nobody really had a good grasp on it. Nobody.
It was so... I love this. This is just making me so happy right now because I was in the same mindset back. I was like, why? Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Why? Well, I mean, what if I am very short-manned and now you're telling me that I can only do things in 4? I can only. So I have 3 time out. I can't go into this building because I only have 3. I don't have 4.
Right.
It's like I'm committing a sin by not going in there with 3.
Yeah, it's me and Butch Cassidy here in the front.
Exactly.
This is what we're going to do. We got 2 guys. Fuck it.
So the way I handled that was I was like, all right, well, you know what? We're going fucking old school. Get the nods and the gas mask on. Now, how are you going to fucking do it now? And that right there was a pivotal moment because everybody was like, well, we can't talk. Well, bone phones back in the day, bone phones didn't fucking work. I was like, why am I even wearing this thing?
Yeah,
It doesn't even fucking
doesn't
work.
matter.
So, as soon as you started to restrict their vision and restrict their audibles, all of a sudden it's like, and what I would do is I would be like, okay, you're going to do 2-man followed by 4 or 2-man followed by 2 to create the 4 in there.
Right.
And then I just wouldn't let the other 2 go in.
Right.
I'd shortchange them, wouldn't let them go in. I'm like, all right, you got to get to the other side of this building to get out. These guys got, they got whacked out here. They're done. Ready, set, go. And just like, you could literally see the gears going, trying to turn, like, I don't know, does not compute kind of thing. And I mean, it was, and you know where we had the most success? It was so funny. We had the most success within domestic law enforcement.
Oh, fuck yeah.
As soon as we started showing them, basically, no comms, on nods, movement, they were just like, because they're like, oh yeah, this is ninja shit. This is fucking. And then we put suppressors and lasers on the guns, and they were all like, oh my god, this is so fucking cool.
It's so funny, man. I love talking about this because I spent like years of my life like fucking ripping into this stuff and getting into multiple arguments and stuff about this. But because that's the same thing we did. I put people in ProMass, and then in the shoot house, I wired them all for sound. So I would turn the music up to the point where
it's hurtful.
I could be screaming in my pro mask 6 inches away from your face and you couldn't fucking hear me.
Yeah.
So the only thing you could do was move.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I had
Initiative
to look.
based.
I had to look at what was happening with your rifle, with your feet, with what you were doing, and then you had to develop a movement-based SOP because I'm like, what if we get fucking hammered with an IED, if we get fucking, an RPG rips into this, if I go live with this 50 cal and you don't have hearing pro, or you just have auditory exclusion because you have sensory overload, you're not going to be able to hear me anyway. So, and 2, now we put Indige into this where we're speaking different languages and the guys have come from different fucking tribes and a bunch of other bullshit. It's like, we got to have this, and the music, the pro mask, the NVGs, like everything on, it makes your world so small. And guys were like, oh, okay, this is super fucking complex. And it's like, yeah, it's not daylight, dude. The boogeyman comes out at night.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. And I came up with this whole SOP that I think is still actually taught. And it was one-man clearing procedures are based on statistical probability of threat.
Right.
Because you can't, when you enter a room, you can't say,
you can't cover down on everything.
You can't cover down on everything. Yeah. And so, quick peeks and all this other bullshit. Like, and I'm not saying it's bullshit. I'm saying, hey, there's a way that you can enter a room and you can start to clear the entire structure based on the geometry and where statistically the threat would be. You don't have to say it's going to be path of least resistance or, dig your corner, whatever it might be. It's like,
absolutely.
You have to go. So if I can already see 50% of this room and I know I'm going into this room, where am I going to go?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the portion of the room that I can't see because I can already see that fucking portion is clear.
It's so awesome to hear you. Again, I'm geeking out because what we did was we actually took the traditional, like if you go to like any SOCOM approved facility that has a shoot house, they're virtually the same.
Yeah,
they're almost all the same. And so we just took the most popular rooms, which is the square room, and an L-shaped.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did was we took those rooms and we put the doors in certain spots, and we created a matrix of the various different types of expected layouts. So from a square room, corner fed door on this side, center fed door on that side, corner fed door, and it's math. There's only so many things, and we would run it over and over and over, guys. And the guys would come through and they would run through one scenario, and all we would do is we'd change one little thing. Mm-hmm. One little thing, and their ability to bridge the gap from the known to the unknown was shrinking because they were able to start processing it so much faster and more accurate. So they're it's all about split second decision making, but their split second decision making was happening more accurately. I mean, you can make a fast decision, but it probably could be wrong too, right? So we were getting more accurate decisions made in a faster amount of time with a less amount of bodies, and it was huge. It's not that hard. We just took the square room and we broke it down into the various types, and I think it's like I'd have to look at my notes. I think a square room with four walls, 4 different door configurations has like 32 different layouts.
Yeah,
and then same thing with an L shape. Same thing. It was awesome. I mean, and it was revolutionary to a certain extent because we were so entrenched.
Yeah.
God, we got to do it like this. Everybody's got to go. Ready? Tap, squeeze, smack the ass.
Tap, squeeze,
whatever.
punch.
Yes, make sure your feet are in the right position.
Yeah, it's like so fucking stupid. I would sit there and I'd have these conversations. I was having a conversation. I was building a shoe house in Kabul, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I was giving the plans to the guy, and he's like, why? I don't understand why you're building it this way. I'm like, because I'm building it to teach an SOP. I'm actually building the house around the SOP so I can layer in the complexity of the problem by the time they get to the entire structure, and I've opened up all the doors and all the windows and everything else. This thing gets really fucking complex really fast, and the geometry, but I can also close it all off.
Yeah.
And teach the crawl, walk, run to one square room.
Boom.
You know, I can go center fed, I can go corner fed, I can do fucking anything on one that really. But what I looked at in the special operations CQB facilities, like you're replicating the same problem over and over and over again.
You're dancing.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It's a dance.
You're
learning
teaching them
to
the
dance.
tango.
That's exactly what it was. And the moment you change one little thing from that dance card, they are fucked. They cannot react quick enough because they're just robotic in so many ways. And I saw that huge within SOCOM, and then things changed, right? The war and everything changed. And so domestic law enforcement was also having a hard time making that change because they were relying so heavily on SOPs from us to a certain extent. And seeing them be so rigid and so closed out, they literally had dance steps. And I'm watching it, and I'm watching it at one point because when I would come work with a team, a lot of times what I would do is like, hey, show me what you got. Show me how you do this. Let me see what you got, because maybe we just tweak it a little bit. And I'd watch them, and they literally would like set up outside the door, and I'm watching on the catwalk, and I'd be like, watching, and they're still trying to choreograph how they're going to stack. They're still choreographing how they're going to stack. And I'm like, yeah, the house is ready. We've been ready for a while. Anytime now. And then I could hear, then there's talking, and they're trying to talk in a hushed tone, like they're trying to use their tactical stealth voice. Okay, ready. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Right, and inevitably you get. It was just hilarious. It's comical. I hate to rag on them like that, but in the early stages, that's what we were seeing, and it was frustrating because I'm like, okay, we can't do that. We cannot do that. You gotta, and it was hard. It was a hard sell because a lot of times what you and I are talking about went so hard against the grain that we were pariahs.
I couldn't even talk about this in 06. It was opposing corners. Like, you know,
fuck, for us it was running the walls, digging the corners. I mean, to bring that up and talk about it, even in my own circles, even within my own community, they're like, yeah, dude, you're not current.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and then you'd be like, okay, dude, but you guys are you're getting stuffed like a turkey every time you come through this, and I'm running it with 2 guys, and we're not getting shot. Well, you guys are gaming it. We're not fucking gaming it. You're gaming it. We're all gaming it. Fucking
we're just better at it.
Yeah, and it's like, and you know, but talking, but here's the other issue with soft guys too. And I'm not like, there's a ton of super bright, awesome dudes.
Oh, for sure.
Your community's fucking incredible. But you have a few guys who are like, I'm not even gonna talk to that cop. Like, I won't even talk to that cop. And it's like, dude, that cop has done more fucking entries.
Yeah, dude.
In like LA, especially like Compton against fucking, you know, gang members and MI6, and he's done shit by himself in a fucking car, and like he's got a ton of knowledge. Like, just start asking him questions and see what he does, and like, and not only that, like the dude is a bad motherfucker, man. Like, you get him on the range and he's like shredding fucking steel and moving like a gazelle, and you're just like, dude, why could you not listen to this guy? And it's like, Mid-South doesn't teach you guys how to do this. And you'd have that conversation. It's like, man, Mid-South and Dieter is not, those aren't the only two answers to
No.
this equation. And I would go around, I mean, dude, I don't know how many fucking courses. Like, I'm surprised I never got around to taking one of yours, but like I would talk to guys and go to these fucking courses and show up, and then I would do the same thing. I would go back and I'd take it back, and I was running another project for several years where that's all I did was direct action. And I'd take that back and put it into my guys.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'd have Indige clearing fucking 10,000 square foot facilities, multiple rooms, multiple stories. Quiet.
Yeah.
Could fucking hear them.
It's
Not
scary.
one white light. Not one white light. Like, literally clear the fucking structure, get to the top, fucking
Index.
leave. Like, they wouldn't even wake the kids up.
Man, dude. I mean,
It was spooky.
It was impressive. Like, I remember when I was doing it, and we were running it for my staff. So, you know, we went down to this facility here in Texas, and we closed it off, and it's an indoor kind of place, and we shut it down, turned all the lights off, and myself and my senior guy, we were kind of hanging back, letting the younger guys run the front part because the front part is where all the action is. You know, we're in the back just kind of like just beep bopping around, right? We're trying to let them get all the work done. And the guys are there and they're watching this. The local guys are watching this all, and they're like, you guys didn't talk at all through the entire building. And we're like, yeah, I mean, this is how we start. We start at this level. And then we'll go down and we'll turn the lights on. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go down and we'll start talking. Because if we can't do it at this level, if this isn't our A game right here, you know, we don't work up here. Mm-mm. This is where we got to be at our game right here. And it was one of those things where, like, you really get an appreciation for other people when they can all of a sudden see the value of it.
Right.
Where they're like, damn. Because, you know, I mean, in all honesty, most of the, like, high-risk warrant service that are conducted here are wicked hairy.
Yeah.
Wicked hairy. And the less, silence is safety.
Yeah.
The quieter you are, the closer you can get, the less likely you are to go to guns because you already have it. You already have the tactical advantage. They're there overwhelmed. It's like, you know, it's like a ballistic breach without the boom. Mm-hmm. You know, by the time they realize it, the gig is up. They just, you know, it's not worth it. They know they're going to die.
Yeah.
And that is huge, man. God, I love talking about this shit.
Catch them in their bed.
Fuck yeah, man.
Like, that's like, catch them in their bed, man. Like, that's like, if you can do it, do it.
It's the way to go.
It's funny. It's good to have you. I mean, it's fucking great to have you down. 'Cause I don't talk about this stuff at all anymore.
I haven't talked about it forever. It is funny. I'm getting like a schoolboy. I'm like, yeah.
I know.
It's so funny because I'm like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I love talking. And not that it hasn't been fun beforehand, but it's because this to me represents the intellectual side of our community. Mm-hmm. The ability to think and be comfortable thinking outside of the box and bring to the table new ideas. I hate to break the news to you, but you know, opposing corners came from something.
It did.
It didn't. We weren't born with this idea. Opposing corners is the way we got to do it from now on. It was evolved to, just like for us running one of the walls and digging the corners. That was something that we evolved to. We didn't get there without going through something first. And that's what I keep telling them. I'm like, hey, this isn't how we always did it. We started doing it this way because we discovered that it was better than the way we were doing it before. How did we discover it was better? Because we used it and we played with it and we experimented with it and we tried it in different scenarios and we learned that there were things that didn't work that we need to change.
Well, it was funny because I basically built a lab, like a tactical laboratory, and people were like, why would you call it a tactical laboratory? And I was like, dude, endless amounts of sims, endless amounts of fucking role players, scenarios. I could tee up any scenario. And I could collect data. And that was the big thing for me, was being able to do that over and over and over and over and over again and collect data. And where I really became a data head was there. Yeah. Because what I was trying to build and what I ended up building was an assessment curriculum based on performance that everything had a number. So if you made entry at an inaccurate weapons position, you were dinged by X. If you didn't penetrate far enough into the room based on the tactical circumstance, there was there's not an arbitrary 2 feet or whatever it was. It was based on the furniture layout and the dead space. You had to penetrate the room deep enough in order to clear the dead space effectively as you collapsed your sector of fire and engage a target, obviously a shoot no shoot scenario.
Right.
So, and then leave the room in the same way. So leave the room with the proper weapons posture, clear into the hall, because typically there's a hallway or another room to room, clear in the most effective way, meaning in the statistical probability of threat. So then move through the structure in the appropriate weapons position, the correct amount of speed, because if you're going too slow,
it could be just as bad.
It can be just as bad, but speed isn't always security, right?
Yeah.
So, because guys, I'd always talk to them, is like, well, how fast do I go? How slow do I go? I'm like, what does the tactical scenario tell you how fast? It will tell you. It's like, well, how can you? It's completely subjective. I'm like, no, it's not. You just got blown off the street. You know, you have 2 minutes ahead of the guys that you just engaged.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that it's 2 minutes, then I would just assume that it's a fucking minute.
It's like less
so
than that.
So that dictates your speed. You can't you can't start doing SSE.
Slow and methodical isn't going to work.
It ain't going to fucking work, homie. No. Like that shit's you got to increase your pace. And so the start of the scenario would dictate the speed, and then you'd assess somebody, and you come out the end of the iteration, you'd have a number, say 78 out of 100, whatever it is, right? And I'd have a number. And guys were like, I don't know how you're getting that number. I'm like, well, I have cameras in each one of these. I was on the catwalk here. You penetrated left instead of right. In actuality, you should have went right based on the fact that this angle of exposure into the room, you could already see 50%. So you went to the direction that you could see, and then you had to collapse your sector of fire. You exposed your flank for approximately fucking half of a second, which would have allowed the person with an AK or blah, 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 blah. So you could articulate the entire thing. Well, why am I being dinged? And why and how are you assessing it with numbers? And I'm like, this isn't me just looking at video going, you did something wrong. This is me applying that you entered a room with your weapon at high or low. When you're doing one-man CQB, there's nobody ahead of you.
Yeah.
You got to go in ready to fucking shoot.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy, man. I can't go in ready to shoot.
Oh my God, dude. We used to have whenever we do this, we have what's called a leaderboard.
Right.
And all a leaderboard is we break everything down into the squads, boat crew squads, and fire teams, and we break it down to swim buddies. And then there's we over the years we discovered that there were 6 major what we consider to be tactical errors. 6 major ones, like some of the ones that you just rattled off. And we would have a column. So each boat crew would have the list of the guys' names, and then each one of the tactical errors would be listed above. And every run, anytime there was an error or anytime there was a safety violation, we called them safety violations, we would just go up and put a tick mark on it. So we were able to track through metrics, where was the problem? What were we having the most problem? Was it on limited penetration? Was it on the fact that you did not recognize the long threat versus the short threat? Was it whatever it was, we were able to finitely identify what it was, because it was different for every team.
Right.
And a lot of it depended on what they were trained in previously. That kind of dictated where they started to make the most errors. So then we were able to articulate the problems and why they needed to change. Like in the first, it was real big resistance. My head hurts, But after we were able to show them the leaderboard and show them all the mistakes and how they're making them and why they're making them, they started to come around. The other thing, the reason why we call it a leaderboard was that you had people within your team that were making more mistakes than others. And that became a leadership issue. So you, as a leader, needed to figure out why he was making those mistakes and start fixing it, or start getting ready to... Exactly.
And some of those guys were making mistakes, and they were dominant personalities within the landscape.
Yes.
So you're like, dude, you can't just say you're fucked up like Hogan's Go. You got to be able to say, these are the things that you're habitually having the same issue with, and we've reminded you, and this is why you're in danger to the entire team. And guys, I remember having a conversation with a guy as I was moving him out of the assessment process, and he'd been on the job for a while, and it's like, man. And I didn't like him to begin with. I was like, man, there are a lot of other professions out there.
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're highly qualified probably to be like a pizza delivery guy, like a fucking mailman. I don't know. But CQB ain't your thing, dude.
Right.
That's all I'm saying is like,
Well-
you're gonna kill more of us than you ever kill more of them. Like that's not gonna happen.
We did things so unique. We wouldn't start live fire at all. We wouldn't even pretend to go to live fire. And then a lot of times teams would be all pissed off because we'd do an entire course with no live fire in it. I'm
Right.
like, hey guys, you're just not ready. We're gonna put everybody at risk if we do this. And we would have like every one of those tick marks equated to a physical remediation.
Right.
So you would go out and the easiest one to do is a tire pull. And so like on day 1, freebies. First day of class, you're learning. All right. Second day of class, tire pull, 25 yards there and back. Third day of class, 50 yards. Fourth day of class, 100 yards. So by the time, and it was so interesting because it's like my own little social experiment. By the time we got to day 4, day 5, the number of 100-foot or 100-yard tire pulls was greatly reducing from what we saw on day 2 and day 3. It was funny. It's like, oh my God, I am going, because what I had to get them to do, I was like, the number one mistake that everybody's making is you're moving way too fucking fast. You cannot think this fast. You are not there yet. There are teams that can do this. You're not one of them. You do not have the skill yet to do that.
Well, and I used to talk about this a lot, where it's like new SOPs before they become battle drills, and moving through the phases of psychological competence. Have you heard of this? The phases. So you're unconsciously incompetent, then you move to consciously incompetent, and then you move to consciously competent, and then you move to unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
So like, I'd always use the analogy of driving a car, right? So when you first learn to drive a car, you don't know how to fucking drive ever. Maybe you've seen it on TV, but you're like, you're going 10 miles an hour and you're sensory overload.
Yeah.
And then you start grinding the gears, you get a little bit better, and then all of a sudden you're driving, but you still have to think about it. You're consciously competent. So you move from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent. So I'm thinking about it as hard as I can, but I'm grinding the fuck out of gears. Or nowadays there's no manual.
No manual, I was going to say.
And then eventually,
For you
you
young
move
listeners out
over
there.
to like unconsciously competent. And now, you're 30 years old, you're smoking down the interstate at 85 years old, you're drinking a cup of coffee and you're jacking off and you're changing your fucking stereo on your phone and you're texting your girlfriend. It's like, now there's a difference.
That's an image in my head right now.
Yeah, but there's a difference because your expectation is to be able to do that in a Formula One car, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That is different than driving down a straight line at 85. That's like civilian unconsciously competent. But you have to be a Formula One driver. You're driving at fucking 250 miles an hour, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Shifting, managing fuel, fucking everything is fractions of an inch and fractions of a second. Your expectation for this SOP cannot be that I'm going to jump in a Formula One car and fucking compete at the highest level. It will not happen, and you will die.
Yeah,
you will fucking die.
Absolutely. It's frustrating because a lot of times it's that ego thing that gets back in the way.
Yeah.
And we had, like when we would do this, if we were going to go live with a team, we would do the first day of class would be what we call a CQB safety test, which is just a live fire drill for pistol rifle. It's not very complicated, and my experience, and I'm sure you can see the same thing, is that if somebody is not good at shooting, they will be even worse at movement, because then every target that you put out there becomes a problem. That becomes a problem that overwhelms their thought process, where a target should not. A target should just be easily managed, because that's something that I don't even have to. It's like breathing at that point. And they had such a hard time understanding why we can't. And so what we did was we phased guys in. So we're like, okay, well, you guys can go live fire. These guys are going to be using paint. These guys just have blue guns. And we allowed everybody to kind of interact in there. And that was the only way that we can keep it safe and move at the level of competence that we wanted to move at.
Right.
The guys that had the skill, we didn't want to punish them. The guys that were young to the team maybe, or just having a hard time figuring this all out, the only way they're going to learn is by integrating and getting in there and making mistakes and trying to learn from it. So it was the only way we could do it. But so many people got butthurt about that because they just couldn't understand those levels of competence. They couldn't understand that, hey, not everybody's going to be the same, but we have to work together, and this is the only way that we can do it safely. It was frustrating, but most of the time, like most of the time we'd get through like about, I don't know, 3 or 4 runs, and the team leader would come over and he's like, I'm so glad you're having us do it like this. He's like, I kind of like have some questions about my own guys. At this point, we're like, Roger that, no problem.
Well, Jeff, man, it is time.
Holy
thanks a lot, brother. I know, 6 o'clock, we fucking smoked it.
Damn.
All right. Hey, Jeff, where can people find you?
They can go to tridentconcepts.com. That's my website. If they're looking for travel or training on the road, they can travel to a class, tridentconcepts.com. If you're here in Central Texas, you can visit me up at the range at Austin. I think it's therangeaustin.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for having. Thanks a lot for coming down. I know it's like an hour from Austin, but it's been awesome.
This is great.
It was great.
Man.
Fucking A.
Really enjoyed it.
You guys are invited anytime.
Awesome.
Launch Code Podcast. I'm Evan Hafer. Thanks a lot, everybody.